Hi, my relatives. Riel here. I'm not sure if you're going to have any footage of me starting to go to the island for this first travel podcast, but if we choose to leave that in, that's awesome. If not, this is our first travel podcast that we've ever done. We went and visited our guest, Douglas Nichol, who is Heiltsuk from Bella Bella, was raised actually on the North Shore of Vancouver, and was reconnected to ceremony by following the Lakota ways in the prairies. And I've had the great honor and privilege, and I'm so grateful to Doug to be able to attend ceremony at his home and to be able to sit down with him in a different version of ceremony where just listening to his story. And he's an amazing man. I think that the world has a lot to learn from him. And it was a pleasure to sit down and just have coffee and listen. So I won't tell you too much because I think that he tells it better than I could ever summarize. So without further ado, here is Douglas Nichol.
Hello, my relatives. How are you? Here at Our Storytellers, we care about your spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical well-being, which is why we want to inform you that this podcast discusses topics that may cause trauma to listeners and viewers. These subjects include mentions of Indian residential schools, assimilation, ongoing harm, colonial impacts, and much more. Our Storytellers recognizes the need to minimize risks associated with traumatic subject matter. The Hope for Wellness helpline offers immediate help to all Indigenous people across Canada. It is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to offer immediate support and crisis intervention. Services are available in English and French and in Nehiyaw, Anishinaabe and Inuktitut upon request. If you or someone you know are experiencing any harm, no matter how big or small it's perceived to be, you can call the toll-free helpline at 1-855-242-3310 or connect to the online chat at www.hopeforwellness.ca. Kinanaskuman, I'm grateful for you. Your ancestors are always with you. All my relations, Riel.
Doug, my name is Riel. I'm Métis from Nichol and Soto background from Manitoba, Red River, Manitoba in particular. And thank you so much for sitting down and just coming on the podcast today. It means a lot to me, and I just have this protocol here to offer you just to make relations with my family and yours, and just thank you for sitting down and sharing whatever stories you want to share. And yeah, I'll pass it over to you, and please introduce yourself in your own way.
Thank you. Well, my name's Douglas Nichol. My name's Douglas Robert Philip Nichol, the name I grew up with. I'm part of the 60 Scoop, and that's the name I grew up with. I've got a older brother is a 60 Scoop as well. And I grew up in Lynn Valley in North Vancouver. I'm Heiltsuk Nation. I found out when I was 19. I was in provincial jail, and a brother goes, "So are you status?" It's like, I don't know what status. And he goes, "You don't know?" And it's like, "No, I don't. What is status?" So he gave me all the information, who to contact in Ottawa and send him a letter. So I sent this guy a letter a couple times back and forth. And then I got this big manila envelope. It was like, 1/4 inch thick. And I'm status. They said, you are not Canadian. You are Heiltsuk Nation. And it's like, oh, okay. I didn't know what that was either. Didn't know where it was from, or, what's a Heiltsuk? So that's when I found out when I was status, when I was 19. And I still didn't really know what it gave to me, what it was, supposed to be doing for me. And that's when I guess I started feeling more native. Like, I've always known I've been native, but not knowing who or what or where I'm from. was a big part of not knowing, right? And growing up as a kid, I'd, get into fights or come home crying for whatever, and Mom would ask me what's going on, and a lot of it would be racial things. And she'd always go, well, you're adopted. And Mom was still God at that time. She says whatever, and that was the truth. And she'd put her arm up to mine and go, see, I'm white and you're native. We're different color people. We're different kind of people. And but she'd always say, but you're mine. I love you, and all that stuff. And it's like, oh, okay, Mom. Whatever you say is gold. So I was 11 years old, and a friend of mine asked me to go to his Sunday school. I said, oh, okay, I'll go to your Sunday school with you. And one of my sisters is Haida, and she painted a white dress shirt with a killer whale and a flower of life and a killer whale on the back of this brand new white dress shirt. So I called it my Indian shirt. And I said, Mom, I can wear my Indian shirt to this Sunday school, because we never went out anywhere and never got to dress up and wear it. And she said, that would be perfect to go to Sunday school in. So we were there playing around, doing things in this basement of a church, and there's like 30 kids down there. And there was like 8 women.
Keep going. Yeah.
There was like 8 women that were kind of like corralling us around, pushing us around, go here, do that. And then it was story time. So they started corralling all the kids to one side of the one corner of the basement. And there was like 4 or 5 women cut me right off and pulled me over to another corner of the basement and started shaking their finger at me and saying, how dare you wear such heathenish clothing into our church? And fuck you guys, pushed my way through them and ran out the door. And my friend, Doug, what's going on? It's like, nothing, Rob, I'm going home. And I was crying. And I get out the church, out the door. And like I said, I was 11. But when I was 8, my brother and I were fighting. He's like 5 years older than me.
Yeah. Brotherly stuff.
Yeah. So Mom sends us to our rooms. And I'm sitting in my room pouting and crying and hating him and hating everybody. And then all of a sudden he comes over and, Doug, want to smoke a joint? And I smoked a cigarette or 2 before. And it's like, whoa, got me all head dizzy. And it's like, well, what's that? He goes, well, come on over. So him and I hung out his bedroom window smoking a joint. So I always had after that. And when I ran out of the church, like a good addict does, I don't want to feel, I lit up a joint.
Yeah.
And went home. I was like a couple hours early, told my mom what happened. And again, she says, well, you're adopted. And she goes, that's the white man church. And she goes, it doesn't seem like it's going to be good for you to go there. She goes, there's a way for you to find your spirituality, but I don't have a clue how that's going to be done. Like, she goes, I'm just a white lady from Lynn Valley.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay. And she goes, but you always have a creator that loves you. Your creator is always with you and he always loves you. So since I've been 11, I've had in my head that I've always known I've got a creator that loves me.
Yeah.
So I say maybe within that next couple of weeks, I had a dream of seeing an Indian up in the middle of space, standing between 4 posts, and a whole bunch of elders there just being really happy that he was there, and they're all just, being there with him.
Yeah.
Didn't have a clue what that meant. Go up a whole bunch of years. I was cleaning up, going to AA and NA, and the brothers I'm meeting in there, they started going to a sweat lodge in Capilano. And
Right by the train tracks, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
So, come on to a sweat, come on to a sweat. And I don't know, I thought you had to go there and puke out all the horrible things you did.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, well, you know, I don't know. I hummed and hawed about it for a while. And then I went, and then I'm hearing these brothers praying for the people that are in those 12-step rooms and their families. And it's like, well, I can do this. Mm-hmm. So that's when I started going to Sweat Lodge. I think it was 1997, I think.
How old were you?
Oh, no, 30-something, 34.
Was that your first exposure to ceremony in like in general? Or like couple of events here and there?
Well, I've been to a longhouse a few times.
Right.
And seen the dancing and, you know, listening to the
Right.
crying away. And
Yeah.
But that didn't really hit me as ceremony, because I've never had a part of that and never done that. I've got a good idea of what it's about, but I still don't really know.
Right.
And I really caught on to the Sweat Lodge. It was really good because it was winter time when we started going there, and it was every week, sometimes twice a week, once we started all gathering together like just a bunch of sweat hogs.
Yeah.
And so that's what we did. And
On the cap.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
And then I went to, first time I went, they're all going to fast, and they went down to Bear Butte. And it's like, oh man, all my friends are going. And I'm telling my mom, and she goes, would $500 help you get there and get back? It's like, yeah, it would, Mom.
Yeah.
So she gave me $500 so I could go to my first fast, and I went down to Bear Butte. And when I was up on the hill, there was this young lady just over there ways, and she's from BC. Her name's Farah. She's a singer. And she was just down over there. And a funny thing, because after we came down from the hill, she goes, I know we're not supposed to be looking at each other, but every time I looked at you, you were standing. And I said, well, I was always standing.
Yeah.
I wasn't. But she's like, oh, wow. So anyway, while I was there, I had a blanket like this with the frillies hanging over my head there. And there was a rock, like right where the wall of the porch is.
Yeah.
And my hochoka was around me. And I was sitting there praying. It was the morning. The sun, like it's just starting to kind of get light out. And then I felt a little thing hit my head. And it's like I'm sitting there, and then another couple, bang, bang. And it's like, what is going on? And look over at the rock, and then I saw this little tiny, like, little person about that big, little female stick her head up and was looking at me. And it's like, wow. And then she went down, and I hear the...
Yeah.
And then a little man stuck his head up. And he had short black hair parted to the side, thin black mustache and goatee. And he had like the big collar with the, you know, the bow tie hanging down and black. It was like Little House on the Prairie kind of outfits that they were dressed in. And she had a little bonnet on her head and puffy shoulders. And he got up and looked at me, and then they went back down there, chatter. And then all of a sudden, fling, fling, fling. 3 little hits me. And then they both looked up at me, and then I moved, and then they just took off.
Yeah.
And I was told that little people look after hurt children. And I didn't know why they were there then. It's like I didn't have a clue. It's like, wow, this is so cool. I'm getting visited by little people. So I guess they saw that I was a hurt child, you know, and I was there on my road into true recovery, you know, not with alcohol and drugs, but with life in general that I have to recover from. And that was my first year I went sun dancing. But when we were going up on the hill, I was going up, got all my ties, got everything. And then when I got up there, my black tie wasn't there. It's like, oh no, like, oh, and it was getting dark, so we're not going to find it on the way down. So I went back down the hill. And the next morning, all the people that were up there were coming down, and a lot of people were doing their 4-year giveaways. And a brother came up and gave me tobacco and black tie. Said, here. It's like, oh man, you must have known.
Yeah.
So, you know, there I went. I went up on the hill that first time. And I've been up there a few other times. I guess that's where you know, the beginning of my, you know, ceremonial walk. And then I started sun dancing. I danced 8 years in Montana underneath a man named Melvin Graybear and his brother-in-law, Floyd Youngman.
Yeah.
And how Mel got to be where he was at, his sister had a dream of him turning into a buffalo. So Floyd and Mel went down to South Dakota to learn from Frank Foolscrow. And he danced with him for 12 years and then went back up to North Dakota and Montana and then started a sun dance. And there was all sorts of bad words at him. You only danced 12 years, you can't be doing that. But at the end of his life, there was over 400 people in that arbor that last day, that last year that he was alive.
Yeah.
So he did help and touch a lot of people. You know, I don't know what year it was, maybe my 3rd or 4th year. I started, well, the second year is when I started going to the directions, the 4 directions, 4 posts in the ground, and I pierced twice on the front, twice on the back, and tied up in that square.
For our listeners that don't know how a Sundance is structured, like, would you mind explaining a little bit about like what first year means, what that kind of stuff means, and what piercing is?
Well, I don't know about the first year. It's just first year you go dance.
You commit for 4 years, though.
Why? I didn't commit for any time.
Okay.
When I talked to Mel, I handed him tobacco and I said, I'd like to come and dance at your dance.
Okay.
I've sweated for a year. You know, I've got, 2 years clean and sober. And he's like, oh, okay. And he's digging around in his pockets and I'm talking and talking. Then he goes, you might need one of these. And he handed me a buffalo skewer. And I said, no, I've got those already. And he's like, oh. And then I look and it's like made out of the same stuff too. And then he smiled. It's like, oh, right on. He goes, okay. He goes, I want you to dance 3 days. The first day, just go under the arbor and watch how everything works. So then you know kind of what to do when you go in there. So I went and sat there for maybe an hour or two, and then I still had things to finish. And so I went back and finished up my stuff. And what I saw was brothers going to the tree. The tree is a poplar, and we go cut that down somewhere a ways away, and it's got a Y in it. And the Y is the male and the female sides of life. And we use poplar because it holds water, and water is the first medicine. So we go get the tree, bring it back, and then we lay it out on sawhorses, and we cover the ground in star quilts and blankets so the tree doesn't touch the ground. And then we make prayer ties out of tobacco and colors. And the colors that we were using there that he taught us to use were black in the west, white in the north, yellow in the east, and red in the south. Green for Mother Earth, blue for Father Sky, and purple for Tunkashala. Mm-hmm. And so I got that. I went to the first Sundance with a rope and a lot of tobacco. Mm-hmm. And that's all I went with. And I had to make my kilt, my skirt when I got there. Mm-hmm. And I had the buffalo skewers. And that's what Melvin was smiling about, was that I had buffalo skewers and they weren't choke cherry, because that's what most people use down there, choke cherry. Mm. And then it was after I was told, after my first year dancing, it's like, oh, I see you have buffalo skewers, so you're a lifer. And it's like, what do you mean? Well, you're a lifer dancer. You start with buffalo skewers. That's where your road's kind of headed to, is just you're praying for the people. Mm-hmm. And I don't think I got a chanupa until my third year. Mm. And
what's a chanupa?
It's something that we use to pray with. Mm-hmm. And it's what people call it is a pipe. Mm-hmm. But pipes come for many different reasons. And a chanupa is only used to pray with. Mm-hmm. And it's, I think it's catlinite, redstone, and for the stem, I've got purple hardwood from Africa.
Oh, wow.
So it's, when they're both shined up, they both look beautiful.
Yeah.
But either way, that's a chanupa, and that represents the tree that we brought to the Sundance. Mm-hmm. You know, the stone is Mother Earth, and the wood is the standing people. And the standing people are the trees. Mm-hmm. And the trees are what breathe life to us.
So you got your chanupa in your third year. And then what happened?
Well, the dances where I was dancing in Montana, Melvin told me, because you have a really strong chanupa and your prayers are always heard. And it's like, don't tell me that. Like, I don't want to hear that. Like, you're putting more responsibility on me with mm-hmm. that. And he goes, well, you picked it up. And it's like, yeah, I know I did, but I don't want the responsibility. Yeah. And he laughed. And he was a really big man, and he had deep voice, and he was kind of, you know,
yeah,
almost feeling uncomfortable when you get around him sometimes. Well, he showed up to North Van to the Alano Club to do Uweepi. Mm. And I heard he was up on 3rd and St. George's. So it's like, oh, I want to run up there and give him my tobacco before the line starts. And I'm walking up the hill, and I've got all my ties and a pouch of tobacco. Before then, he goes, you sure have a lot of anger in you. It's like, what? Does it show that much? He goes, well, I can see it. It's like, oh. So he's there again for another Uweepi, and I'm walking up the hill, and I'm just ready to hand him the tobacco, and he goes, that better not be for your anger. You should have let that go. I just slammed it into him and turned around and stomped away. And I heard him just start laughing. But, you know, he was a wonderful man. He had a beautiful heart and so much knowledge in his head. You know, that the stuff that he passed to me were certainly life altering and set me on a good path to be not doing what I was doing before.
What's one lesson that you think about every day that he taught you? Or one thing that's really stuck with you?
Just be happy. And I struggle with that. Like I can get pretty miserable, and I've been in a lot of accidents. I've been hit by 6 different cars, being outside of the car at different times. And one time I had to have brain surgery, so I had 3 holes drilled in the side of my head. And I've hurt myself doing drugs and just being a maniac out there, where my road was black. There was no feeling, the only thing I was looking for was more. And it was either more money or more drugs, or more money so I could get more drugs. And that was just all it was. And like I said before, I'd been in provincial prison. I've been in a couple work camps. I was in Ocala in '83, and there was a riot that I was in there. And, when I was on the streets, I was doing all sorts of bad stuff. I did bad things to some people, really bad things, and hurt them horribly. And walking this way, though, with my chanupa, the one that I didn't care to really have too much, and all my eagle feathers and buffalo skulls, it's like this is a reason why I don't do drugs anymore,
right,
or go crazy with the way I was before, because this is my responsibility. And I've had this, for after we got here, maybe a year after we got here, not even a year, maybe just after we got here, I was given 3 eagles by the ministry. And when I was over in North Van, or over in Burnaby, after we lost everything in a fire, I'm calling the ministry over there. They said, well, go through your nation. And I said, well, I'm from Bella Bella. That's like the central coast of British Columbia. They're not going to be mailing me an eagle.
Yeah.
And he goes, go through your local nations then. And I know people on the 4 nations because of Quequitlam too down there.
Yeah.
I called the 4 nations that I know down there, and I was told, no, if we get an eagle, we'll give it to our people first. And it's like, oh, never going to be asking you again.
Yeah.
So when we got over here, I called him up, and the guy says, I phoned and left messages, and then he phoned and left a message. So I phoned and left another message, and then we finally talked, and he said, okay, well, he was in the office after 5 because he was busy picking things up out there. And he said, he goes, I know we have 1 eagle in the freezer downstairs, maybe 2. I'm not sure. And it's like, wow, I'm just asking you for 1.
Yeah.
But the next day he goes, well, I'll call you in the morning right after I get in, and then I'll see what we have and let you know. So it's like, okay. He goes, I'll call you 8:30, 9 o'clock. So I was up at 7, waiting. He didn't call. I'm phoning, leaving him messages, texting. And then about 4:30 that afternoon, he finally calls me up again. And he said, sorry, Doug. He goes, I had to go down south and had to pick up a bear. And then after that, I had to go up north and I had to pick up an eagle. So he goes, I'm bringing you 3 eagles today.
Wow, cool.
It's like 3? Wow.
Yeah.
And it was freezing out. It was November and it was so cold out. We were living in a place up there in Black Creek. It was the building we were in used to be a corner store for a big campsite down there right on Oyster River. So we're there. I got all these eagles. We have nowhere to put them, but it was freezing out, so I could just leave them outside.
Yeah.
And I'd take one in every couple of days and take it apart and start stringing it up.
Get working.
But that's how I got this, my double eagle bustle.
Oh, nice.
That's 2 eagles on that one.
We'll take the camera around and we'll show everything after. Whatever you want to show, we'll take it around.
Yeah. And I was able to... my headdress there is almost finished. I've got the quills tied on, and I'm going to cover the quills in fur. I've got a fur jacket over there, and I'm going to cover the quills in fur, and then the brow in another leather piece with a copper right on the front there, and on the sides I've got 6 buttons that were from our neighbor here, but they're Air Force buttons.
Okay.
So I was going to put those there, and then I bought 3-inch abalone buttons that I'm going to have on my ears. So behind that, I'm going to make a concho of leather, put the abalone, and then on top of the abalone, I bought 6 ermine. So I'm going to have 3 ermine hanging off of each ear.
Oh, wow.
And then over top of the ermine, I've got another one of those Air Force buttons, but it's bigger than these ones. So those will sit on the ears.
Cool.
And I've got on it my pointer feathers for what you have in Sundance. You make a crown, and you put the very top wingtip feathers in your crown. And I've got those on either side of my headdress there.
Right.
And I come from a chief's family in Bella Bella. My grandmother was a chief. She was the oldest of her siblings, and my mom is the oldest of her siblings, and I'm the oldest grandchild. And a year ago in the summer, just before summer, I guess, I went up to Bella Bella to go see my mom and my granny. And they've been asking me to come home for a while to go up and visit. So I took the ferry up. We pulled into Bella Bella at 1 a.m, and I probably got into my mom's house maybe 20 after 1, and probably laid down on the couch at 1:30, and was woken up at about 7:30 with the family all there, waking up and making breakfast, and getting ready to go. And it was, I think, a Sunday. And it's like, wow, what's the rush? So I got up and got all ready. And it's like, well, we're all going to the hospital. So we all went down to the hospital to go see my granny. And she'd been like out comatose. She'd been dying. And so my mom was sitting right up at the head of the bed, at my grandma's head of the bed here, and I sat with my mom. And every time I'd go up to Bella Bella when Granny was alive, my family would always want the 3 of us to be together because we're the 3 oldest. And so I was sitting there with my mom and sat there for about 15, 20 minutes. And then I went out to the hall to have a coffee. And I was kind of wandering around out there, and all my relatives, go sit with your mom, go sit with your mom. So I went and sat down with her, and we were holding hands, and I was reaching over, touching my granny, and my mom had her hand on her head. We're there just, praying, being with her. And then I sing a grandmother honoring song in the sweat lodge. And I started singing that song to her. And on the 3rd, just before the 4th push-up, my mom and I were, looking right at my granny, and I saw her stop breathing. So she waited there for me to come home. before she went home on her journey. And, you know, it choked me up. You know, it's like, oh, my granny just died, you know. And I finished the song, and we all had hugs in the bed, in her room. And it's like, well, we're going to go now. Like, there's no point in being here. And we all walked out. And where the hospital is in Bella Bella, it's there, and there's the waterfront here. And there's a big spit that comes out like this. And there's a big area down there at the water. So I came down and went out to the water, and I sang that Red Road honoring song. And an uncle of mine that I danced with in Montana said, you always hear people talking about the Red Road.
Yeah.
He goes, that's the road we come in on and we go out on. The road we're here on is the black road of indifference. So that's where you're using your head and your prayers, asking for guidance to walk on the road you're at here in this plane. So it's like, oh, okay. So I went out and sang her the Red Road song to start sending her on her way home.
Yeah.
And what's sad about that is that none of my family there knows any real Heiltsuk songs. I've got couple cousins, younger cousins, that started to go back and learn the language. And they did sing a song. It was a feast song that they sang. And I was so happy that at least someone of my family stepped up and sang a Heiltsuk song. Because I don't know any.
Yeah, totally.
I don't know any Heiltsuk songs.
Yeah.
And everything I was singing was Dakota or Lakota, you know, Sundance Sweat Lodge songs. And my family are looking to me for words and you know, finishings and startings of things. In I think 2014, there was a canoe gathering in Bella Bella, and that was the second one they had. We had the first canoe gathering here on the West Coast.
Right.
And there was, I think, 16 or 19 canoes that showed up at that first gathering. And at this gathering, there was over 70 canoes. There was like 7,000 people that converged on the village of Waglisla. And it's just a little tiny island, and it was so neat. There was just so much there. They'd brought in big tractor trailer trucks with just washer and dryers, and tractor trailer trucks with just showers and bathrooms, and it was just so cool. There was just so many people there. But I was hitchhiking on Facebook looking to see if I could get on a canoe, saying this is where I am, or no, I was living in Vancouver then.
Yeah.
But it's like I can make it. I'll come and meet you.
So you were trying to get on a canoe to get back to Vancouver?
No, to go to Bella Bella.
To go to Bella Bella.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, so the starting down south and going up north.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
So Kamloops picked me up, said, yeah, we could use your shoulders, you know. So I met them up in Port Hardy, and talk about a small world. I was there, and the lady's house that we all went and stayed at, her and her husband and their granddaughters know the dad I grew up with. They were down visiting him like the year before, or a couple years before, and they said, oh, you raked up his yard. And it's like, wow, right on. And then I hear a brother that I first started sun dancing with, we started the same year, I hear his voice. He said, is that you? And he's like, it is, Dougie, what are you doing? So, you know, right on, there was, like, the world got even smaller.
Yeah.
But, and that was so special to me, to go home in a canoe.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Because Heiltsuk, we're not totem pole people, we're not, like, we're big house people, but we're canoe builders.
Right.
We're canoe people. And we're ocean-going canoe people. We're the big canoes.
Yeah.
So to go home in a canoe just filled my heart.
Yeah.
Well, we went up there, and there's the soft landing. That's before there are two landings, a soft landing and a hard landing. And the soft one is where you're welcomed in by chiefs and dignitaries. And then you go out and, stow your boat, your canoe. And then the hard landing is when everybody that made it to that gathering goes and rafts up all out in front of the village. And there was like 70 some odd canoes all rafted up out there. And the farthest comes in first. And the two farthest was Alaska and California.
Oh, wow.
And so they came in, we welcome in, welcome. Well, that's the hard landing. I made it to the soft landing, and a girl that I grew up with was a Squamish girl, and she saw me. I hear, "Hey, Dougie, you made it." She was just screaming, and it's like, "Right on, hey, Donda." So that filled my heart. Good, somebody saw me come home in a canoe.
Yeah. And, you had a witness.
Yeah. So that really felt good. And right when we got there, I went up to my mom's. It's like, I'm going to stay at my mom's. I got a bed there. I'm not going to sleep on the ground.
Yeah.
And the brother, the Sundance brother, I just let him use my tent. So everything worked out. So the hard landing day comes, and I start walking up to where our canoe was camping. Nobody's there. It's like, where the heck is everybody? And then the brother showed up, and he goes, "Oh, I came up to get whatever it was." And he goes, there was this lady on the canoe when we pulled into Bella Bella territory. There was a longhouse that we went to stay at, and all the canoes showed up and camped out in there. Well, this lady kept on going, "Well, what if someone from the nation asks us to move or doesn't want us there?" I say, "You have a grandson of a chief of the nation where we're going. You don't have to worry about that." What if someone asks us to move? Like I just told you.
Yeah.
And she wasn't listening at all to what I was saying. Well, she took my seat for the hard landing. She didn't even pull at all in that canoe.
Yeah.
But she wanted to be, part of the glory.
Yeah.
So she took my seat, and I didn't have a place to sit. So it's like, oh man. So my mom and my granny and myself, we sat right on the front, like right up front where we could see everything. Nothing was in front of us.
Cool.
Well, that lady, her husband was the grounds guy. He's the one who pack everything up and move it to the next camping area and set everything up again. Well, he goes like he came up and sat with us because I feel real bad that my wife did that. And it's like, well, it seems like that's where she needed to be, and I'm okay being here.
Yeah.
So all the canoes are coming in, and Comox is coming by, and I yelled out, "Aye, Hoss, my grandmother thanks you for taking me home." And they all just dropped their head.
Wow.
They just dropped their head in shame and floated on by.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. In shame.
Oh yeah, they didn't look good.
Dang.
They didn't look happy at all. But that's them, And like I felt hurt for a long time about that.
Yeah.
But like I said, a cousin saw me.
Yeah.
So I'm all okay with that now. And
Yeah.
I did go home in a canoe.
Yeah. How long did it take for you to get back?
Oh, not too long, because the thing is, we only pulled for about 10 miles.
Yeah.
Well, not even from where that big house was to the village of Waglisla.
Yeah.
And like I said, it was still in our territory. It was another one of our big houses over there.
Yeah.
But there was gale storms from the top of the island up that way.
Oh, wow.
But the support boat we had was a big, huge monster, beautiful seiner, big, nice stainless steel seiner. He just picked up the canoe and put it up on the back of his seine, and we went through the gale storm. There was 2 canoes that broke going through that gale.
Really?
One broke right in half, but they were able to save it, and they dragged it back, and Bella was able to put it back together, and we patched up the other one good, so they were both seaworthy again.
Yeah.
But that was a scary one for the one, like it broke right in half.
Yeah.
There was a lot of work to get put into that.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. So that was a very proud moment for you when you were coming home and you're in the way you would have went home anyway.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
And then, how did that impact your ceremonial journey moving forward after that?
That my life, it helped me feel a bit more connected to Bella.
Yeah. Because you didn't grow up there, right?
No, I grew up
in North Van.
In North Van, Lynn Valley.
Right.
In a white home.
Were you born there, though? Were you born in Bella?
No, I was born in VGH.
Oh, you were born in Vancouver.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Well, how I was created was that my mom was 18. She was out with her friends partying, and the guy that she was sort of blinking her eyes around at raped her.
Oh, God.
And that's how I was created. So when my mom was 3 months, starting to show, my granny sent her to Vancouver to have that baby and come home without it.
Oh, gotcha.
So that's how come I ended up down there.
Right.
And the first person I met from Bella physically was the father's mother, my father's mother, the man who created me, his mom. And I met her on Commercial Drive, went and had a coffee. She went down there to get her hair done. And she was a hard lady, really hard. And,
yeah.
And her words when she left was, "I just wanted to see who you are." It's like, okay, well, this is who I am. And I'd just come out of a alcohol treatment center in Gastown. And I'd met, I was there, and morning breakfast was at 8 o'clock, supper was at 5. The morning, I'm laying in bed, sort of almost awake, and I hear someone walking around, and it was like cubicles that we slept in, like a dorm cubicle sort of setting. This guy comes in, he's like, it's breakfast, come on, you guys, get up if you're gonna eat. Oh, and Doug, you've got a phone call. So it's like, oh, okay. So I go, hello. And I hear this lady go, is this Douglas Nichol? It's like, yes, it is. And she goes, well, if you're the Douglas Nichol we've been looking for, I'm your Auntie Connie. And I said, do you know Bruce Nichol? I think you might. And that's my older brother, and I figured he was just pulling some BS on me.
Yeah.
She's like, no, I don't know Bruce Nichol, and I am your auntie. It's like, oh, okay. She was real stern about it.
Yeah. You got antied.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, okay. And she goes, do you have a pencil? It's like, yeah, I got a pencil. She goes, I'm going to give you my phone number, and I want you to use it. It's like, oh, okay. And she tells me her number, and then we start talking, and then she goes, what's my number? And I told her. I didn't write it down. I just remembered it. She goes, okay, we'll use it. And we, said goodbyes. And she was living in, I think, Burnaby. And then another auntie was living out in Fort Langley. And my uncle was down visiting them. So they got a hold of me, and I from the treatment center, I moved to Chinatown with my brother and my two nephews. Mm-hmm. And the phone number was under my nephew's name because my brother and I had screwed up our names and couldn't do it. So he had it under his name. And I'm still getting phone calls from my mom. And they're always phoning me, and they're loaded. Just shit-faced.
Yeah.
And usually it's like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And it's like, oh man, you're talking to someone drunk on the other end. It's like, just stop phoning me when you're loaded.
Yeah.
So, my uncle and my two aunties came for a visit. They wanted, we want to come and meet you. You know, we're your family. We want to come and meet you. So it's like, oh, all right. And they showed up, and it was a misery day like this. And like, I can't even remember what time of year it was. Maybe fall. But they come in, and we live with my nephew, my oldest sister's son, and his best friend. That's just like another nephew.
Yeah.
So the best friend, his mom would always buy him big, huge box of potatoes and a can of ketchup every month.
Yeah.
So we ate a lot of potatoes.
Yeah.
And so it was like welfare day. My aunties and uncle come up and show up. And it was in Chinatown, and everything was made short. All the counters and everything. And they came in, and they were looking, and they were just, wow, what a great place. Look at how everything is. Because everything would fit them, because they're short.
Yeah.
Short aunties.
Yeah.
And,
Hi, Sylvie.
So I'm showing them around. I said, oh,
short aunties.
Yeah, it's like, here's my fridge. And at the bottom was like the two shelves that it's full of beer. And next shelf had a whole bunch of potatoes. And it's like, that's what we got. And my uncle, I could see him. He was shaking, sweating.
Yeah.
And he just like opened his eyes when he saw the beer. It's like, want one? He's like, yeah, sure. Cracks went open, and both the aunties, Junior, kind of gave him that yell.
Yeah.
And he's like, what? He offered.
Yeah.
And on my stove, we had a gas stove. On my stove was a dinner plate, and the upside down, all covered in hash nerds. And want some? He's like, sure. So that's how I met my aunties.
Yeah.
And when I went home to Bella Bella, the first 2 times, it was drunk out for me the first 2 times. I was just an idiot, loser, flopping around the village. And one of my aunties there was the bootlegger. And my mom's house was the party house. So my mom, a few times, she sent me, could you go down to Auntie's and get a bottle for me? Oh, okay. So I go down, could I get a bottle for my mom? Oh, sure, here, nephew. And didn't have to pay a thing. So getting free booze all over the place here. And and then when I carry 2 names. One is Hustuees, and that's from Bella Bella. And I just started cleaning up again before I got that name. And I think I had 9 months clean when I went up to Bella Bella for a potlatch. Mm-hmm. And my grandpa gave me that name. And that name's taken from his halibut fishing grounds. That's what his halibut fishing grounds is called, is Hustuees.
Yeah.
Hustuees. And my auntie described it as being deep spiritual place in the water. So that's who I am. Hustuees, deep spiritual place in the water, from Bella Bella. And what was I saying about that? Oh, yeah, I went up for the potlatch. Mm-hmm. And that's when I was clean. I had 9 months clean when I went up there for that. And that's when I found out how I was created. Because I was staying at my granny's, because Mom's house was still the party house, and I had 9 months clean. And when I was making my way up there, doing all the planning, I think it was my mom that said, I don't think you should stay here because there's too much drinking going on.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay. So I stayed at Granny's, and I'd go up to Mom's every couple of days or every day and visit. So it was okay. And the day I'm leaving to come home, I'm catching like a 4:30 plane down, and it's about 11 in the morning. My granny, we were up at the table, and she, you know how you were created? I was like, no. And she told me, your mom was raped by Johnny Hall, and Grandpa was out running around the village with his rifle, gonna kill him. And Johnny had to leave the island for a few months because he was really gonna get killed. And she was, that's how you were created. And it's like,
Yeah. How does that make you feel to learn that?
Well, I was a mess for a long time. I felt like I was the wrong one.
Yeah.
I felt like I was the total wrong one. But I went to school for alcohol and drug counselor training after cleaning up for a year. You had to have a year clean before you did this program. And in there, I used to say, well, I'm a product of a rape. And my teacher goes, that sounds too ugly. She goes, you're a product of God. It wasn't, there was the act, but there was the creation that you are. And you're a product of God. You're made out of God's love. And the act that made you might not be as fuzzy and warm, but you're a loved human being. And it's like, oh, okay, well, that changed my whole look on how I was looking at myself.
Yeah.
And then been through some healing journey courses and stuff, and seeing what people were going through, and I'm able to heal a lot from other people's healing.
Yeah.
Seeing what they've done and seeing how it's working for them. It's like, and then just having that switch in my head to say, well, I'm not going to feel miserable. I'm not going to walk around with a hate on today.
Yeah.
Where quite often that's where my head was at. The family I grew up with, I had two older sisters that are white. My mom and dad are white. But they had 36 foster children went through their home. And then they adopted my oldest sister, just saying, well, you always have a place to call home and we'll always be your mom and dad. And that's how she was just kind of adopted into the family. And both my brother and I are both legally adopted with their name. Well, now why was I saying that?
It just seems like throughout your life, you were just discovering a little bit more about yourself, and
That's how it has been, and I can remember back to at that time in the church, as clear as day, I remember it. And then I remember that dream of that person up in the middle of space. Well, what that person was me. I saw me up in the middle of space in between those four posts.
Yeah.
Because getting back to that again, talking to Melvin on my 7th year sun dancing, I went over, the dance was done, and him and Auntie Lorraine were over there in their trailer, and my wife and I went over to have some coffee with him and hang out. And he said, do you know what you're doing when you go to the 4 directions? It's like, well, suffering for my prayers. He said, well, that, but what you're doing once you're pierced up and tied into those 4 directions, you're going right out to the middle of space where all the ancestors are. And they really love it when you go there because they don't have to come down here and worry about getting stuck. He goes, because men have egos. They know how to call for help, but they never send those ancestors home.
Yeah.
He goes, so they love it when you go to them because you just talk to them like I'm talking to you now. Because you don't have to get all weird praying like.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh. So, you know, and I've gone to the directions. I've probably stood there 10 times or maybe even more. But I stood there, yeah, I think 10 times there in Montana. And I danced 1 year in Utah under a man named Basil Braveheart, and he's from Oglala off the Pine Ridge Reservation. And when we went visiting him, he was saying the dance the year before there in Utah, he goes, you really should have been there. There was 11 intercessors there, and you should have been there. It's like, why are you saying that to me? Like, I don't hear anything. He's like, well, you should be there. And he kept on, he was always looking at me. We were talking. I look over, and he's just staring at me. And he didn't know what he was seeing. And he asked me before, he goes, have you ever been hit by lightning? It's like, no. Because in your dreams, it's like, no. You know? Yeah. So there was something he was seeing in me that I might have a connection out there. And then going back again to responsibilities, it's like, well, that's makes it even bigger now. Like, now I've got that connection. Now I have to be, you know, sitting behind a bucket and that. And I remember 15 years ago, my auntie, she became an elder in Native Education Center in Vancouver.
Oh, NEC.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And so it's like, wow, cool, like right on. And, you know, I still kind of chuckled at her. It's like, well, you're not even that old.
Yeah. You
know, but she's an auntie, she's a granny. And it's like, right on. But I danced down here in Merville for my last 2 years. And there was a couple of young guys down there that were calling me uncle. And that really made me feel weird. It's like, I'm a dancer. Like, I'm not your uncle. I'm just a dancer here to pray. But I wouldn't, you know, cut him down or cut him off by, you know, saying, well, I'm not your uncle. You know, I just let him talk. And it wasn't until, you know, nephew Al here started calling me uncle. And he just right away, hey, uncle. It's like, wow, like right on. And where I'm seeing more of that now is that people are seeing what I am, I guess. And I still don't understand it. I've always been just this guy. Yeah. You know, I've still got my crazy thoughts and you know, things I want to do, but I know I'll die, you know. But I still don't really understand it. I know in my head because of the walk I've been on, the things I've experienced, and probably what's born in me that, you know, I was 11 having that dream, seeing me in outer space, you know, so, and when I was a young boy like that, I thought, I wonder if I'm going to be some sort of a savior. You know, I thought I want to, save somebody in a great way. And then I started, using drugs and did all that life. Then I started cleaning up. And it's like, well, I got to save me in a miraculous way.
Yeah.
Like I'm the one that has to come first in this walk. And then, others can come after, but I don't know anything. I don't know how to stay clean. Just don't use. And that's, what I know about that. It's like, how do you stay clean? Well, you just don't use.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Well, you just don't use. That simple. And I guess I learned a lot of just being direct on the things I'm looking for out of a person that's coming to ask me for help.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know how to fluff things up. I've never been a real fluffy person, like, well, let's ease you into this. It's like, there you are now, do it.
Yeah. Yeah, trial by fire.
Yeah.
Exposure therapy.
Yeah.
One of the things that, it's not our first time chatting, obviously, but I grew up in a Sundance family. I've never danced, though. What advice would you give to a young man who was thinking about going to a Sundance and dancing?
Be sure that's what your direction is.
Mm.
Because you have to be precise in your prayers. And that's a lot to put out. To have sticks stuck through your skin and tied to a tree.
Mm.
That's big. And out there dancing and pulling and, making that tender or numb from pulling.
Yeah.
It pulls your skin out quite a ways when you're up on a tree or if you're tied to 4 posts. It's never scared me. It's never thought like, oh man, I'm never going to do that. That's crazy. Mm. It's like I said, it's been a part of my journey that's how it is.
Right.
I've never questioned my journey of where I'm at in my life. Mm-hmm. Because can't do anything else but be where I'm at.
Yeah.
But be sure that that's what you're going to want to do.
Yeah.
It's like you were saying about before committing to a dance, and I didn't commit to any dance, mm-hmm. but I went there with buffalo skewers, and that was my commitment that I didn't even know I was doing.
Right.
But it's in my heart to be praying for people always.
Right.
And then again, like I said, I'm a trained alcohol and drug counselor as well. So that helps mm-hmm. on just dealing with people. And I worked in the Lookout Emergency Aid Society for 13 years. Mm-hmm. And that's homeless shelters and tenant-supported buildings of, mental health and addiction. Mm-hmm. So I learned a lot there. When one of the shelters is in New Westminster, and it was in a hotel there. And when we got there first, it was brand new. Everything was just kind of like tacked together. We had a little office. It was just kind of thrown together. And we got to go cruise around this old hotel. And way down in the basement, there was even another set that went farther down. And this door, it was just had a big chunk of plywood over it, and it was there, sealed off. And then co-workers finally took it off, and we went into this tiny little apartment down there, and it still had string in the kitchen with underwear and socks. Mm. There was a can of beans like in the sink with its lid open, and the can on the stove had still some ugly little beans crust in there.
Yeah.
So I'm sure somebody died in there and they just sealed it off.
Wow.
They didn't do a thing, didn't clean it up, didn't re-rent it or anything. And that hotel has supposedly been haunted for quite some time. And there's tenants that lived on one side of the building, and the other side was the homeless shelter. So I was asked, could you smudge out the building, see if we can clear out some of this negative energy? So it's like, okay. So we went downstairs, and I was in the women's washroom from the bar. Like, the bar's upstairs, you come down to the women's washroom. So I was down there, and I just walked into a stall, and I'm smudging around in there, saying, any of you spirits in here, negative, you gotta go.
Yeah.
You can't be staying here. You're scaring people. It's not a good thing for you to be here. And then, boom, my elbow got pushed, holding onto my smudge bowl. And it's like, hey, you can't be doing that. And I still get EBGBs. But that was the first time, and I think maybe the only time that, no, I've been touched by spirits after, but the only time, like clearing a place out.
Yeah.
And I've smudged out
lots of places. Lots
of downtown hotels
Yeah.
in downtown East Side, because there's so much death in those places.
Yeah.
And there still is, and it'll be a constant. That whole street down there is like the Walking Dead everywhere. Either the Walking Dead person or the spirits that are down there.
Yeah. That's interesting. I've never heard it put like that before, but yeah, interesting.
When I was using in a hotel room with this girl, she was asking around, needed a room to get. And we went into the China rooms or something like that, right on Powell Street in Chinatown. And it's just an old, dilapidated, fallen apart hotel. And she knew the custodian guy there, and he said, "Oh, okay, I'll give you a room. Just go in this one." And there was the bed frame with the springs, but no bed, and a wooden chair, and an ugly, dirty sink with an ugly, dirty cup. And that was it. That's where we went in there to start shooting drugs. But when I walked in, my spirit came out of my body, and I was watching everything that was going on.
Yeah.
But I couldn't turn around and look up and look at me. I couldn't.
Yeah.
We did our drugs, and then we left. When I walked out of the room,
back in your body.
Came back in me.
Yeah.
And then I used to say in the Narcotics Anonymous rooms, the only reason for me to stick a rig into my neck is for me to die. And I went out after 7-8 months clean, saw a friend that, another Lynn Valley girl that we hung out with, and she was downtown using. It's like, come on, let's go. And we went into I can't remember the rooms that they are, but they're right close to the Patricia Hotel. There's a little rooming building there. We're in there. Anyway, first one I stuck in me, I dropped and I died. And my spirit came out of my body then. And I saw everything that was going on. The girl's room, no one's dying in my room. She went running down, called 911, and I had drugs in my pocket. And I'm looking down at everyone down there. It's like, dig my pocket. Dig my pocket.
Yeah.
The cops will get it. Just dig my pocket. And no one did. But they didn't get it. And I was laying on the floor, and there was cops that showed up first, then the ambulance, then they had to wait for another ambulance because they had to Narcan me. So I was laying there waiting for the other ambulance, And I wasn't breathing, so they've got a bag up there and they're breathing for me and guys pushing on my chest.
And you're watching this all happen.
Yeah, I'm watching it all. And before the Narcan got there, the cop goes, take out his braid and sit on his hair. And the paramedic, what? Sit on his hair. He looks like he'll come out kicking and swinging. So I was sitting on my hair and they Narcan me and I was up there looking down going, no, don't do that.
Yeah.
And I'm reaching up and I was like that far away. And if I knew if I touched what I was reaching for, I would have gone.
Yeah.
And then I came out of it.
Yeah.
Kicking and swinging because I didn't want to be alive. I didn't want to be here in the misery that I was living in.
Yeah.
So I'm glad I'm glad they did, and life's gone a whole lot better and
Yeah. Yeah.
things are good.
What do you like? So bringing it back to today, like today you run a lodge out here in your backyard, and one of the things that you told me was like when you were building the community out here that you were just sweating by yourself every single day, and then eventually people came for healing and stuff like that. Like, how do you use ceremony today to help people who have gone through similar struggles?
Well, I talk.
Yeah.
I've got lots of ways of not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
And the only way is just not to.
Yeah.
And things will get better after that.
Yeah.
It's stop doing the things that are making you miserable.
Yeah.
Stop hurting yourself. And once you stop hurting yourself, you can maybe start liking yourself a little bit.
Right.
I tell people, go to the bathroom mirror and look in it and say, I love you, Douglas. And say it with meaning.
Yeah.
And feel it. And if you don't, just keep doing it until you do.
Yeah.
And I've helped a lot of people just with that.
Yeah, totally.
Learn how to love yourself. Because a lot of people don't, like how I grew up, there was tons of love around me, but I just didn't accept it because of how ugly I felt from how I was created.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know how I was created, but I felt like an ugly, ugly person. Mm-hmm. I didn't know what was wrong. There was something wrong in my head. My whole body something was wrong, and I didn't like it. Mm-hmm. And that was created feeling, and don't want to feel, so you use drugs to not feel. But like I say, things are good now.
Yeah.
I don't go off. My wife and I, we have our squabbles. But we're still together. We've been together now for 20 years. Mm. And that's a miracle in itself for both of us. Mm. Because she's come off of a bit of a dark road as well.
Right.
And most of everybody I know have come out of 12-step rooms. Mm. And some need to go there. It's scary having to say there's something that's got their control over me.
Yeah.
And I hate being controlled by anything, anybody, government, police, my wife, if she's telling me, you're not doing this right or whatever, I don't like it. But it's, when I hear that and I start getting frustrated about it, it's like, well, I just have to accept things how they are.
Yeah.
And I can always be smiling. I don't always have to be, miserable and burning people off or, back doing the things I did. I just don't do that anymore.
Right, right. Do you think we control so much of how we perceive things and how we take things, like that's within our own control? Because it seems like listening to you, it seems like it's kind of it's a little bit of a choice, You know, it's a choice every day.
Yeah.
You know.
It's a choice. And again, it depends on who you have around you.
Yeah.
You know, if you're looking up to somebody for guidance or, you know, just a hug, you know, and then they say something really ugly, and that might like really affect how you're looking at somebody again.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just knowing that, I don't know, what I tell you is just coming from my experience.
Yeah.
You know, so some of my experiences were wrong, and I don't do those anymore. You know, to counteract that, I, you know, help the people that were doing the things I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see a lot in people that are out there.
Yeah.
You know, and I can understand, you know, where they're coming from. And it's kind of funny because, like, there's people I'll meet on the ferry or anywhere, you know, people are just attracted to me and they'll start talking. And the people that come over, we're talking, they're always, something bad has happened in their life just recently. And it's like, well, that's, you know, that's a horrible thing, but there's acceptance that always needs to be done in those things. Like, you got to accept that bad thing that happened, you know, and accept if you had a part in it or a part in this person's life, you have to accept your part in that person's life and how you see you've affected that person.
Right.
And if there's any negativity in that, you're the person who has to look after that, not anybody else.
Right.
You know, the person that the negativity is going toward, they're going to have to deal with it and either not letting it hit them or being able to let it go.
Yeah. Bringing it back to today, and thank you for those words, but what do you want, like, us as Indigenous youth to start doing today? What's the priority for us? If you could give us any wish, what would you want?
Get into culture. Get into your culture. Culture saves. Like, in East Van, they were making those big, huge feathers. My brother Patrick Smith was a big part of that. And they had all on the feathers. Culture saves, culture saves. And it does. It's like what our uncle used to say, Uncle Melvin Grey Bear used to say, he goes, I'm not here to change your way of praying. I'm just bringing how I pray and what this does for the people. Because he brought Uweepies to Bella Bella a couple times. And I went up there for one. And this is before I had a chanupa. And I went up there and we were standing outside of the building before the Uweepie, and we're out there talking, smoking. And he goes, this is where you're from, hey? It's like, yeah, it is. He goes, wow, it's a beautiful place. It's like, yeah, I like it. It is beautiful up here. And he goes, what I like the most about it, he goes, I can smell the bread being cooked. I can smell the bread being baked.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of home. Because everywhere people are baking bread at home too. And it's like, right on. So I remember things like that, you know, that comfort of smelling bread, you know, and how that really filled his heart.
Yeah.
You know, to see that, and it's like, well, yeah, you know, and it's just the little things that you can appreciate that can fill your day.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, he off his res, you know, it's his culture where he came from. And
yeah. What does ceremony mean to you in general?
Healing, health, well-being.
Yeah.
Be happy.
Yeah. Do you think
healing from whole life's downers? You know, because there's so much of that out there. Like, I can sit here in a little bubble of the people that have been coming around here, and we can get all woozy with the prayers, but it's still pretty ugly out there. You know, these people that are coming here are happy and well, and again, what I've kind of noticed is that they're pretty crystal twinky kind of people that have been coming around, but they enjoy this.
Yeah.
And they're not bringing their woozy weirdness in with it. They're just coming here and experiencing and wanting to learn.
Yeah.
And that's a really good thing that I see, is that they're wanting to learn. You know, they'll teach me some songs, you know, teach this, teach that. It's like, well, I'm not a real good cultural teacher. It's like, just follow what I do. You know?
Yeah.
Just do as I do, not what I say.
So, but like that's important. I feel like do you think our ways are for everyone, kind of thing?
We're all part of the same medicine wheel. It's got those colors on it for a reason.
Yeah.
You know, and that encompasses the world and everybody on it, and every single facet of life is in that medicine wheel.
Yeah.
And that's why there's all those 405 sticks around an arbor. Mm-hmm. Those sticks are asking for new medicines, because there's a medicine for each of those prayer ties that are out there for diseases that haven't been met with a medicine to stop it. There's a medicine out there for everything, you know, and that's what those are for.
Cool.
Yeah, and I like the medicines I use. Like, we got cedar, you know, that's the first thing I'd want to use in a lodge, is because this is where it is. Mm. You know, and cedar is everything to us here, you know, especially to the Heiltsuk, because that was our ways of getting around. It was our ways of getting around. It was the ways we cooked. It was the ways we ate.
Clothes too.
It was clothed ourselves. Cedar is everything to us. So by putting cedar on the stones in a sweat lodge and using that medicine to help us as well,
Okay.
you know, really feels good in my heart. It's like, you know, I see some people in lodges, they've got all this different medicines from everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what is all that doing? Like, you know, I'm glad you've got the knowledge of them, but that's still from way down there.
Yeah.
You know, I see a lot of Mexican medicines come up here to the sweat lodges.
Yeah. Totally. I've seen it too.
And it's like, that's fine for you to use. You know, I got cedar and, you know, some you know, Devil's Club and some you know, red willow fungus, you know, for that's pretty much as good as
what you need it for. Yeah. Totally. One time my dad told me, we were actually just getting ready to set up the podcast at my house and stuff like that, and I had a smudge bowl, and I just had a bunch of sage, and I just put a bunch in it. And he came over, and he was like, my family are all my ceremonial and cultural advisors, because this is how I grew up, right? And so Dad was like, there's way too much smudge in this bowl. Like, if you want to get to know a medicine, like, you only need this much. It's so much powerful. Yeah. You know? And then, like, ever since then, I've just been, like, me personally, I think I've just been trying to learn a medicine, because there's so much power behind that. Like, especially one like smudging or sage or tobacco. Like, how much can you do with tobacco, you know?
Yeah.
So much. And so that's kind of where I've been. It's kind of where I've been at in my ceremonial journey. You know, I think like one of the things I never really got the chance to thank you for was like I've been going to ceremony my whole life. After I went to university, I kind of lost my connection a little bit. I never lost any invite. I've always been invited. You know, it was just up to me to go back, and it's just so hilarious to me that, you know, my Australian brother, you know, is the person that brings me back to ceremony for the first time in a long time. So I just want to say thank you for taking care of him, and thanks for taking care of me too while I was here too. And, you know, this protocol that I offered you, I prayed with in our first sweat together, and yeah, I'm just so grateful. You know,
Well, good, thank you.
No worries. No
It's like,
worries.
again, like you were saying about using just a little bit.
Yeah.
It's what Melvin Grey Bear taught me through a brother that first brought me down to Sundance there.
Yeah.
And he was all worried, oh, I gotta go, I need these prayers. And he brought over a bucket of tobacco
Yeah.
and says, here, Mel, I need some prayers, blah, blah, blah. Melvin's like, pulls out a pinch, prays with it,
Yeah.
tells my brother what he needed to hear. And he's like, oh, okay, bye. And left the tin of
bucket.
tobacco.
Yeah.
And Melvin's like, I don't need all that.
Yeah.
And it sat on the stump until everyone was gone. And then Buddy finally went, well, there's my tobacco. I might as well take it.
And grabbed it, brought it back. Yeah.
And I say that too up there. It's like you don't need a lot to put in the fire.
Yeah.
You know, you just need a pinch.
No, our medicines are so powerful, you know, and it takes a lifetime to learn anything. So, you know, but yeah, no, I mean, do you have any questions or anything else you want to chat about or anything like that? Any other story? Do you have a good vision story other than your main one with the 4 posts up there? I'll tell you one. How about that?
Sure.
So one time when, so we started this setup September 30th of last year was when our first episode came out, and I was like working it, and it takes time to learn this stuff, and even this podcast I'm sure won't be perfect by any means, but you know you just start something and then you learn it as you go.
Yeah.
And so I'm starting it and I'm learning it as you go, and you know what happens to you is like you go through those like high periods of like, this is unbelievable, awesome, and you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing, and I know nothing, and then you go back up and you're like, wow, we had some success here today, and then you go back down like, I made a terrible mistake. So we're riding those waves, like my friend and I, and this always happens to me, but it's always when you least expect it, I feel like. And normal day, hard day, I'm just laying down to go to sleep, and it was one of those days where I was so tired I didn't even get changed out of my clothes. I just laid down and I closed my eyes for a split second, and it felt like I would go down and close my eyes and I opened them and I was in a different spot, and I was in what I thought was a chalet, but I looked it up later and I think it's a church actually in Montana too. And I wake up and this old man comes in, and he's dressed like a hunter, and he's got a big scruffy beard, and he sits down, wooden chair just like this, honestly kind of like this table. He sits down, he looks at me, he goes, hi, my name is, like, I've known you for a really long time. He goes, like you, I'm known by a lot of different names, but you can call me David. And I was like, oh, hey David, like, how's it going? Like, what's happening? And he goes, yeah, do you know why they call me David now? Which was interesting. I was like, I have no idea. Like, why do they call you David? He said, well, I have this, I want you to go and read the story of David and Goliath, and then you'll understand. I still haven't read the story, to be honest with you. I watched this video on YouTube, but I feel like you got to read the stone cold pages to get it. But, and then I woke up. It was only 40 minutes, an hour later. I woke up, I called my dad immediately. It's midnight in Alberta time. And he answers, he's like, what's going on? I'm like, Dad, I think someone just came, saw me. I don't know who it is. His name was David. But he said, like you, I have many names. I was born with 2 names. My first name is legally Drake, Riel, Drury. And my parents, I don't know what happened. They couldn't agree, I guess. But they called me Riel my whole life. And I don't know who he was, still to this day. But Louis Riel did go by the name David as his prophet. Like, he loved the prophet David. And like I've read that story I've listened to the story a couple of times. And the story of David and Goliath is an insurmountable person. Like, he kills him essentially, but a person that is so feared, a mountain that needs to be conquered. And I haven't really figured any of that stuff out yet, but that was one of the most like realistic, like holy shit moments of my entire life, because I've never met a spirit like that. It was winter. The other thing is that it was in the church that Louis Riel was like, he was a school teacher in Montana when he ran away, and that's where he lived. And I don't know, it just gives me chills. Like, I almost crying thinking about it right now, but that was like one of the most amazing experiences of my entire life. I still feel like I haven't really settled what I needed to do with that, and over time I'm sure it will come. But yeah, that's interesting, eh?
It is.
Yeah.
Tell you, we were down, when I sundanced down at Wounded Knee in Pine Ridge. I was at my brother's, and he just lives up the hill from the graveyard. And we went there, we went out on the hill fast. And Cynthia was over that way a ways, just on the other side of a bit of a hill there. And there was people all around us up there. Could hear people singing and drumming. But I was up, and then just down the hill a ways, there was this big dead tree. And I saw a man come there. He was there. And there was 3 baby bears with him. And he was there, just down there with the bears. And it's like, who are you? I was asked, and I got a name through Melvin Graybear, Yellowknife, and that's Mila Z in Dakota. And when he gave me that name, I asked him, what does that name mean? Like right after he was untied, everyone's going out to smoke. Went and handed him a cigarette. What does my name mean? And he goes, oh, one who walks through life with gratitude. What did you say? It's like nothing. You told me. He's like, oh, okay. And he's like, oh, gotta smoke.
Yeah.
So that's what he told me. And it's like, oh. And then at another UWEP, and this is after Mel had died, this other guy named Keith Pache was there. We were doing a UWEP with him.
I know Keith.
And I went and I said, what animal is watching over me? And he says, ask me after the ceremony. So it's like, oh, okay.
Oh, you cut off, but you can keep going, yeah.
So it's like, oh, okay. And so after the ceremony, everyone's going outside to go smoking. So I go, hand him a smoke. It's like, what is my name? Or what animal's watching over me? Mm-hmm. And he takes it, and a bear.
Yeah.
And then, what did you say? It's like nothing, you told me. He's like, oh, okay. And then again, he's like, oh, I got to smoke. Like, let's go.
Yeah.
But those are 2 times after ceremonies that, the men that I asked a question looked kind of surprised at the answer they were giving me. Mm-hmm. Well, we were going to Keith's UWEPs in East Van Boys and Girls Club. And it was my birthday. I was 45 years old that day. And we go there. Cynthia cooked for the ceremony too. And how this whole thing started out, all of a sudden she gets a message on her Facebook saying, oh, there's a UWEP, but it's closed. And it's like, well, what the hell are you telling me that for? It's like, why? So we ended up getting a hold of Keith saying, is this closed? He's like, no, who told you that? It's like, it doesn't matter who told us as long as it's not. And there was this one woman that he said, oh, she's cooking. Oh, okay, well, okay. And then just the day before the ceremony, oh, she came on her moon, she can't cook. It's like, oh no, so Canoe. So Cynthia had to whip it all together and cook for like couple, 150 people.
Yeah. A last minute dayer.
Yeah.
I've heard of those. Yeah.
So, and then the woman that had to back out, she was there. She was just lying.
Oh, really?
And there was all sorts of weirdness going on in that community with us and some of the other people there. Well, anyway, Keith was in the gym, taking tobacco, taking prayers. He was sitting way back over there. And the kitchen's here. We come around, go into the gym. And you could hear the hum of people talking. And right when we walked in, it went dead silent. Everyone just stopped and turned and looked at us. And Keith heard it. He's like, turned and looked at us, and he even got a scowl on his face. It's like, what the heck? And it's like, well, let's go in and sit down. So we went in and found a place to sit, and then people started talking again and moving around and stuff. But that's happened quite a bit to me, where people just stop. When we enter a room, people stop and look. And I guess what that is too is got a big spirit walking in that people can feel. And like I said, I don't see it, I don't know it, I don't feel it. I just have to take what I'm seeing that people are seeing.
Totally. Wow. Well, thank you for sharing your spirit on today's. Is there anyone that you want to dedicate this podcast to? Anybody?
Well, my family.
Your family?
Yeah, my cousins that are using, drinking. My brother that's using or he's drinking, and just want them to stop.
Yeah.
And get better. My brother's coming down here after New Year's.
Oh yeah.
So we're going to be having a sweat up there for sure.
Oh, nice.
And he wants to come just for that as well.
Yeah.
One of my cousins had to come through. I shared this up there that he had an emergency doctor's appointment in VGH, so they flew him down there. Or no, he drove, because he drove back up. And he stopped here on the way, and we had a sweat lodge. There was just me, him, and his wife. And he told me, he goes, I have to stop drinking. I have to. Like, I'll die if I continue drinking. That's what his appointment was in Vancouver for. So, okay. So there was, a lot of focus on him and his drinking and alcohol use. And after that, he said to me a few times that that's when his sobriety really started, was at that sweat lodge.
Right.
So that really makes me feel good. And he's still sober, so that's good. And I'm wanting my brother to quit. My mom, like I said, her house used to be the party house. And she's got 13 or 14 years now clean and sober from her abuse. And that was because she died. My family, I get a phone call saying, go over to Nanaimo, your mom's in the hospital. So I went over there, and there she was, looking dead. It's like, oh no. And her liver stopped, her kidney stopped, and her brain stopped. They had all three plugged in when I was there seeing her. And again, Cynthia said, well, call Keith and get him to come and do a ceremony. So we brought him out here, and we brought singers from East Van, got some hotel rooms for them, and we had the ceremony in my sister's neighbor's place. And that woman, she had a pretty new baby girl, and she was sick, and she didn't know why. And she was washing her body with milk, because that's what they did a long time ago. So she said, well, I'll wash my baby in milk. And during the ceremony, Keith said, you have to stop giving your daughter milk. She's allergic to it. And this poor woman, you know, she's doing the best she can for her daughter, you know, wanting her to get better, and she was hurting her. So she just started crying and crying, and it's like, no, you know, you were doing the best you could. You know, she just stopped doing this. So she got that good thing come to her. And after the ceremony, Keith said, he goes, well, I went to your mom and she died. Your nation came and took her home. And she was there with her dad and her sisters and her brothers and, you know, her family who's all passed. They're all happy to see her. And, but they were telling her, they said, you've got a choice. You can stay here with us where you're coming to anyway, or you can go back there. And they showed her her grandchildren. And she goes, well, I want to see my grandchildren grow up. So, okay, well, you have to stop doing things. Stop drinking, stop eating those things. Because she was drinking hard liquor, straight, and eating Tylenol 3 like they were candy.
Yeah.
And that's what killed her.
Yeah.
So Keith, after that, he said, there's going to be a miracle in 4 days. Because I don't know what it's going to be, but there's going to be a miracle in 4 days. So, you know, we got him on his plane the next day. He heads home. The next day after the ceremony, they unplugged her kidneys. And then the next day after that, they unplugged her liver. And then the third day, they unplugged her brain. And in the fourth day, she was sitting up in her bed asking my sister, did I die?
Yeah.
Because she remembers visiting her dad and sisters and everyone who's passed.
Yeah.
And my sister didn't know because I wasn't able to tell her what Keith had told me.
Yeah.
So it took a little bit for this story to get back to her. And both her and her husband, they said, oh, we believe in this way that you're walking. You know, there's a beautiful way in it. You know, I'm sure there's a lot of good healing in there. And her husband's name's Steve. And at the ceremony, he goes, I'm not going to go in there because he was sweating the booze out. He was shaking and just sweating. And he goes, no, I'm not going to go in there because I don't feel I should be there because of what's coming out of me. It's like, well, you're going to get it too anyway. You'll get touched by it. And since then, neither of them have had a drop of alcohol since that ceremony.
Nice.
And when I went home, when we were going to have that ceremony, I went and asked my granny, because we're matriarchal here. You go to the aunties and the grannies. So I asked her, I said, we're going to have a ceremony for my mom. And then my auntie that's younger than me gets an ugly, twisted up face. We don't believe in that. That's the devil's work. And it's like, oh. And I said, okay, if you're willing to look at this man that I'm bringing here to save my mom with those ugly eyes, you have to look at me with those ugly eyes too. Because this is what I believe in and this is the road I'm walking. And we had the ceremony. My sister stood up and, you know, ripped my auntie's and granny's ears off, said, that's our mother, we're going to have it. She's your daughter, she's your sister's, but she's our mother. And we're going to do everything we can to save our mother. And then my brother kind of reiterated that and then left. And we had the ceremony and my mom's alive today. And that was 15 years ago or more. And then after that was the canoe journey I went to in Bella Bella. Well, everything was going out at the field. And there was the speakers and all that out there. And I went out there And it was another one of my cousins was up there, talking and directing things. And she says, if anybody else has, something you'd like to share, the mic's open. So I went up and I said, I'm going to sing this song for all the hottest babes in the village. It's a grandmother honoring song. And there's a bunch of laughter out there. And I started singing. And there was like 4 of the grannies of my family were right there. And I'm singing and I could hear one of them, oh, that's Douglas singing. And they were all excited.
Yeah.
And so I go out and I see my granny and I said, that song came from those people on the other side of the mountains. See, they're not all devils.
Yeah.
And she smiled and giggled. She goes, oh, I know that. And that's my granny who's been beaten by the church, and they were the prayer warriors of Bella Bella. Her and her little crew of grannies were out praying for the people that are sick and in the hospital dying, and they were always there. But she, oh, I know. So I could, and like every potlatch, she'd be there, like right first one at the door, and she's the last to leave. But you ask her anything culturally, she won't say a thing.
Really?
She says, I don't know. You'll have to go ask Moses. And Moses was her uncle.
Yeah.
Moses Humchit, and he was a big chief up in Bella Bella.
Yeah.
But like they got beaten so hard that they're still afraid of their culture, because they're afraid of going to hell and, live there for the rest of eternity, and knowing what my mom went through and just knowing that, it's like you're going to go home, and your home is wherever the good part of your life has been. Mm-hmm. And you'll live in that happy life, hunting, gathering, eating, feasting, loving and living, where this is the plane where we're having to learn all that stuff. And I've heard some of my uncles say that they've heard in hospitals, not again. A man's voice screaming out when a baby's being born, a male baby. And that's that baby's spirit coming back here to learn how to live here again because they didn't get it right the first time.
Oh, really? Oh, I've never heard of that before. That's interesting.
And that's kind of creepy, scary.
Yeah.
Like, that's why I do the best I can not to do what I was doing before. Because I don't want to come back here and have to do it again.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's ugly out there, and it's getting even worse, with the governments, how they're going, and our Canadian government isn't even a government right now. And then what's going on south of the border is scary, because that man wants Canada as his 51st state, and he wants to bully us, and he wants to bully the world. And I think America's really starting to see what he's all about, because they're panicking down there now too. It's like, what have we done? And it's like, it's hard and ugly out there, and I try not to focus on that anymore. Like for quite a long time, on our cable, we used to get MSNBC, and that was all the Trump uglies. And I used to watch that all the time. It was on 24 hours a day. So I was getting my head filled with that.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I don't want to hear this negativity anymore. So I'll just put it on YouTube and watch some of my subscriptions, just mindless fishing things.
Yeah.
Bait making things, or
watch some watch some good wholesome TV.
Yeah.
No big deal.
Yeah, just get out of that clutter.
Yeah.
You know, and
Well, hopefully the next generation will be able to take care of a few things around here.
I'm hoping so. Like
Yeah.
I was saying in Bella Bella, the youth there are learning our language. My mother went back to school to learn our language.
Yeah.
And now she's teaching preschool children our language.
Oh, that's amazing.
So there's a big 180 in her life that she's turned around and walked back into her culture.
Yeah.
And how that's saving her. You know, and she loves her life. She loves working with the kids and, you know, going to the play school every day. And she
Keeps her young probably too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Doug, one of our cameras is overheating right now, but I mean, I'd love to do this again. Did you have fun?
I did. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you so much. And thank you for just taking the time to sit down and share with us and share with our listeners. Like, there's so much we can learn from so many different people, and I'm really appreciative of you being one of them.
Oh, thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Hi, my relatives. Thank you so much for watching today's episode of Our Storytellers with Uncle Doug. Doug, again, if you're listening to this, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing and inviting me to ceremony and inviting me into your home. You know, it's a privilege, and thank you so much for taking care of my brother too. You know, we always talk about how lucky it was for him to be able to move to the island and then have ceremony right there at his back door, and in a ceremony family and a community, and you know, you've had a great role in that for him, and a great role in his healing journey as well too. So for that, I'll be forever grateful no matter what. So thank you so much, and to all the listeners out there, I hope you took something away from this podcast. You know, I know I came away, and I totally did. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you know, the whole shenanigans, please like and subscribe or comment what you thought or anything like that. If you're listening or watching this on Spotify, please follow the podcast. It helps out so much, and you'll be notified every single time we have a podcast come out. And I feel like we're really starting to pick up speed here and get back to what we were like before we lost the cameras. So I'm grateful for each and every one of you. Thank you so much. All my relations, Riel.